Nikolai Petrovsky, professor of medicine at Flinders University, who's working on a COVID vaccine, but who has also conducted research which he says indicates the virus came from a laboratory. The big debate over the origin of the virus, which is dividing the scientific and political world, starts in a remote, abandoned copper mine in southwest China 8 years ago, where a coronavirus very similar to the one that causes COVID-19 was found in bats. It's 2012. The abandoned mine is near the tiny town of Tugun, deep in China's southwest Yunnan province. Unknown to the men working there, the bats populating the mine and the bat feces they were shoveling contained an unknown coronavirus that would later be named RATG13. Coronaviruses are a large family of viruses that attack the upper respiratory tract. Around 2 weeks after entering the miners fell sick with a strange flu-like illness. And so scientists began to ask, were these men the first victims of COVID-19, 8 years before it erupted in Wuhan? Blood samples from the dying miners were sent to China's highest security biolab, 1,500 kilometres to the north, to the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
They had tests that they sent to the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which tested positive for a coronavirus.
I guess I'm a doctor myself, and what's described there, both the patient's symptoms, the course of the disease, their biochemistry and the serology, says these miners were infected with a coronavirus.
It was, and still is, run by Shi Zhangli, who's known as the Batwoman because of her work with bat diseases, and who has confirmed that she did take samples of the copper mine virus to study in Wuhan. But it's the type of research that was taking place here that raises eyebrows and adds weight to the theory that COVID-19 came from this laboratory. It involved the manipulation of viruses for research, which made them incredibly dangerous. Raina McIntyre is Professor of Global Biosecurity at the New South Wales University. She says the bat virus that infected the miners in the copper mine could have been deliberately mutated into COVID-19 through the controversial and risky research technique called gain-of-function engineering.
The genetic engineering of a pathogen can be done in different ways. One way of doing it is called gain-of-function research, which is where you pass the virus through an animal host over and over again. So you're basically speeding up nature. You're like speeding up evolution by hundreds or thousands of years. That's, a well-established technique.
But two experts writing the Wall Street Journal now say genetic markers in COVID suggest it came from a lab, writing the presence of the double CGG sequence is strong evidence of gene splicing, and the absence of diversity in the public outbreak suggests gain-of-function acceleration. The scientific evidence points to the conclusion that the virus was developed in a laboratory. That lab would most likely be the Wuhan Lab of Virology, located just miles from the market the Chinese say the virus jumped naturally from bats to humans. New documents from the Daily Mail show the Pentagon gave $39 million to a charity that then turned and gave money to the Wuhan lab.
Shi Zhangli has confirmed that she and her team conducted gain-of-function engineering on bat coronaviruses at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Nikolai, gain-of-function engineering for the layman.
So essentially we take a virus that we consider to be a potential threat, say an influenza virus from birds. So essentially we harvest an influenza virus from current birds that isn't causing a pandemic, and we now try to insert genetic features into that virus that now would enable it to cause a human pandemic.
Scientifically, what's the gain? What's the good bit about that?
Well, the gain is understanding the enemy. Viruses out there in the wild are our enemy. So the idea here is that by studying the enemy and even manipulating the enemy to see how it could be even stronger, maybe that will help us in defending ourselves against the enemy. There's some who say the risk is we now have created something that didn't exist in nature, which is a highly lethal human virus. And if that was to leak, we have devastation.
This is like a really important issue in general, not just around coronavirus. I saw Jason sort of shaking his head, kind of being like, was it kind of like mind-blowing to you that there's this research being undertaken?
Yeah, I don't think many people know about this.
I'm just so disturbed that this goes on, and I don't think it should go on because it's just so intrinsically dangerous. If we are engineering a virus that could wipe out humankind, it is literally like we're building the Death Star. And if something goes wrong, then everybody dies. I mean, I find it shocking.
I think gain-of-function engineering, this engineering, which is horrific in your mind and mine too, that is banned, isn't it, in Western laboratories?
It was outlawed in the United States. It's now been actually brought in. Interestingly, when it was banned in the United States, the research was actually moved to the Wuhan Institute of Virology because it wasn't banned in China. And so, in fact, at one point, the US government was funding the gain-of-function research that we've seen published from the Wuhan Institute of Virology. But it is a fact that it is legal to undertake this research currently in pretty well most countries of the world.
So, could COVID-19 have accidentally leaked from this laboratory?
Because of the Chinese virus, what happened about 3 months ago, it looked like we were in big trouble, and we were, and I got it back together.
The discussion about China's role in the pandemic was distorted and to a large extent derailed by the blame game so enthusiastically enforced by former American President Donald Trump.
The China virus, the China plague,
Kung flu.
the doctors would say, well...
Did Trump's rhetoric impede conversation about any alternative in the world of COVID and how it might have come about?
Absolutely. You know, scientifically, I think the minute Trump blurted out that he'd read a report that said this could be a laboratory leak, I guess the scientific establishment then said, well, if Trump said that, we have to drive the opposite agenda to prove that Trump doesn't know what he's talking about. Trump may not know what he's talking about, but I think there was this counterattack by saying, well, if we can discredit him for saying that, we can discredit him for a lot of other things. So it was unfortunate that he even came into the debate.
Whatever happened here was accidental. There's no evidence that China tried to manipulate or release any virus into the population. So we have to think of it as an accident. Was it a natural accident or was it a lab accident?